Hi everyone, welcome to the first video in a series which is all about teaching people how to use a package called Flutterflow. So Flutterflow is a no-code or a low-code app builder that's designed specifically to build apps that are suitable for putting up on the App Store for Android phones or Apple phones. Now the good thing about Flutterflow is it does allow you to build apps fairly quickly and fairly easily um, with a lot of flexibility. So with that flexibility also comes a bit of a learning curve on how to build everything. So the objective of these videos is to take you from an absolute beginner that knows nothing all the way through to being able to publish an app on one of the app stores. Now, so we're on the front page of Flutterflow. So basically to get started, what we need to do is click Start for Free. Now the deal with the pricing, in case anyone's wondering, if you want to know exactly what it's going to cost you to put an app up, basically the building is free with some limitations. So you do get some benefits while you're building with having a paid plan. However, you can build your app all the way up to getting ready to publish, but at that point of publishing you do need to buy a subscription in order to be able to publish your app. So the pricing, just for your benefit before we move on to the actual thing, is that basically you can buy a a 1 month subscription, publish your app, and then get rid of the subscription. But obviously, each time you need to do a change, you need to basically pay the money. Okay, so once you've signed up, you'll come into the main dashboard, and the main dashboard will allow you to have multiple projects. So for example, I've got a project going here that I'm building called My Hockey Stats, and I have my first project which I've created previously for this video. Now to click them, it's very intuitive. Just click the create new, give it a name, okay? And once you give it a name, just start with a blank template, just so for the purposes of learning. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take you through exactly how the software operates. So the first thing we should do is show you kind of a little bit about these things. So essentially we have, when you start, you'll get a default of a home page, which is what you've got up on the screen. And with that default, you can add pages to it, and for each page you can then build it. So what we can do now is just to show you, so you have all of these icons down the side. This one with the two funny looking two-page thing is where you have your pages. So it lists all of the pages that you have built in your app. So to add a new page, very straightforward, you can click the button and you can create yourself a new page. So in this case, there's all these sort of pre-set templates. Now, and you can also create things with AI. We'll show you what that does later on. But basically to start now, we're going to create a blank template. Okay, and I'm just going to give it the name second page. Okay, and so now we have two pages. Now the problem is that these two pages look identical, so we'll just put in a bit of a name difference. This. Okay, so you'll see over here, and we'll explain all of this in a second, is we'll just give it the name second page, just so you can now see that there is a difference between the two pages. So we've got our title page and we've got our second page. So that's how you add a page. So we'll go back to the front page. Now, to add elements, the section here is basically where you get widgets. So widgets are basically just elements on a page. And you'll see as I scroll through them that there is literally heaps of different widgets that you can use. So it will not be possible to go through all of those, but simply to give you a bit of a view of the main ones that you're most likely to use. Okay, so you can see there's heaps and heaps and heaps of them. And basically these widgets, and some of the widgets are things that you see on the screen. Some of them, like the column widget, is there to structure the page. So you've got a lot of flexibility in the way that you add them. So what I'm going to do now is, and at the moment the default in most cases is there's a column already on this page. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert, and what columns do is they're designed to stack elements one on top of another in a series. So you can have as many widgets being added to the column as you like. So I'm going to add 2 widgets. We'll add a text box. Okay. And what you'll notice is as I clicked it, you'll see that the appearance changes and it gives you what's called a widget tree, and we'll explain this in a second. So I can place the button on the page. Okay, so we then have our text. Now, if I wanted to shift that up and down, what you'll notice is there's a sort of blue bar below. And if I push that up the top, you'll see, if you can see, hopefully on the screen, there's a little blue bar that appears there. So as soon as that appears there, that means we're changing the order of the text. So we can have the text on the bottom or the text on the top. So I'm going to have the text on the top for the moment. Okay, so that's basically adding elements, and they all pretty much work the same in that you can just drag in an element. Sometimes you'll see something, sometimes you won't. So there are things like, for example, containers, which we'll do later in subsequent lessons, that are there to hold other objects. So you don't see a visual reference to them unless you start doing things with the format. Okay, so the next important element along here is the thing called the widget tree, okay, which you saw briefly when we were adding these things. Now, the widget tree shows you the structure of the page that you're creating, and the widget trees can get really long and they can get really complex, but they're very useful for showing you what's going on. So we have the home page here, and when you click on these elements, you will see that they give you a little sort of reference to what it is. So you can actually change the names of these to make these more descriptive, so that when you're looking at this, rather than just having a text button, you can actually give it a name that's a little bit more logical. So I'm going to, in a second, make this button navigate to the second page. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a go to second page button, and you'll see that it changes in the widget tree, and so you've got much more descriptive things that if you want to, you can name the objects as you go along. See the names change there and all the references associated with that. Now I normally don't bother to rename them, but just in case it's clear. Now you can add widgets in a cup. We've already shown that you can add a widget using this sort of area here, by the way, which you can search. So for example, if I want to search for, rather than scrolling down and trying to find it, you can search by name and it will give you a few different choices. So anything with button in there, button element, icon button or radio button will come up in that search. Now you can add it this way, as we've already done, or you can actually add it off the widget tree as well. So for example, if you want another element to appear within this column, so it's creating what's called, and you'll see it says add a child to this widget. So what the terminology basically means is that you have a column, which is kind of the parent, and within the column, you have some widgets being placed there, and they're referred to as child widgets. So if I add another one, I can add another, let's say, text field, and so it's added into the column. Okay, and it's the same with the home page. So as you get widgets that actually can accept, that are designed to accept or hold multiple other widgets in there, you'll get these little plus buttons appearing, which make it easy. So the column is designed to put in as many elements as you want. So therefore, you have this little icon there. So we don't really need that. But that's basically what's going on this side of the project. Now the second side that we have over here is the formatting side over this side here. So we'll quickly go through what that is, and then we'll get this actual button to do something. Okay, so basically over here we have this little icon here, which is the properties, and we'll go through in more detail, but basically this is all the settings related to this button. This next little thing here, a little action thing, is basically the actions that happen as when the button is clicked. And so you can set all those actions, and you can have conditional actions and all that sort of stuff, where they have logic trees or action trees. So you can assign multiple actions to a button, which we'll show you how to do. These other icons, which we won't worry about right now, is we have add a query. So when we get to the point of adding a back-end database, we can actually query it and associate it with the buttons. So it's not something to worry about just yet. Okay, now to do the buttons, let's quickly go through some of the pages. Now, often with these sort of things, there's lots, you can see there's heaps of different settings and stuff that you can set up. So we'll just probably go through the ones that are most important. So firstly is the visibility. So you can put an element on a page and you don't necessarily need to make it visible, or it can be made visible on events. So you can actually set events to be able to make it visible. So for example, if you have two buttons, and let's say the first button is a yes or no button to doing a certain event, and then you might say, well, if that event happens, then I want to give them multiple other choices, another item can appear. So it's basically you can build a page where you have lots of different elements, some of which you show depending on what the user does. So that's what basically that does. Now the second, probably the other thing that we use a lot of is a thing called padding. So padding is kind of the thing that gives helps with the appearance of the app. So basically, you can see that at the moment the positions of the button and the text don't look all that nice. So what we can do is we can add some padding to that. Now there's two ways to add padding. So you'll see there's uniform padding, which means you just put in a number like 10, and you'll see that now basically what that does is it pushes the button and gives us almost a little invisible border around the button. Okay, so you can see what that is. Now there will be cases where you have independent independent padding, and so you can set each side of the box to whatever you like. So let's say I want 10 here, and it's 10 pixels, and versus say 40 pixels on this side for some reason. There might be another object I'm trying to add, and then we might have 10 here and 10 here. And so what it does, it shows you what the padding is. So I'm just going to stick with 10 at the moment as my uniform padding, and that's all good. Now up here, I'm going to do the same thing. So what you'll find with different widgets, we're concentrating on the button at the moment, though, is that some of the settings are the same, some of them are different depending on the particular widget, but all of them will have padding. So and you'll see just putting a little bit of a border around means that it just looks a little bit better. Okay. So that's what padding is. Okay. Now within the padding, the other thing that we obviously want to do is we can change, instead of just having a button with button name, we can give it and put some text on the surface of it. So let's say go to second page. Okay, so now we have go to second page on there, and what you'll notice is because I haven't done any other settings, what happens is the button expands to the size of the text that you're putting in. And what you'll also notice is that the column, and this is a common feature of columns, is that the columns will expand to the width of the largest item, of the largest object within that column. Okay, so that's just sort of behaviors of that. Okay, so once we've got a name, let's say we want to change the appearance, we can do all of those things down here. So for example, you can change the font size if you wanted to. So if you want to make it 20, and you could change the depth of the font. Now I like what was there, so I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to stick with 16, but you can change all of those things. And you can also change the text color. So we'll have a look at how that sort of looks. So if you click on the color, it will give you a couple of different options. So the option 1 is theme colors. So basically, when you have Flutterflow, gives you a default theme, and this is the default theme with these blue colors. Now you can reset that, and that's something we'll show you how to do shortly. So within this theme, they've selected a range of colors. So if I wanted to say I wanted the secondary text, which looks pretty ordinary, but that's okay, that color green, it will change it to that color. But I could also just choose independently a color like here, and it will give me a new color that I've selected. Or alternatively, you can also use the hex code, which is something you'll learn about later, which is all the codes for the different colors. So I'm going to stick with, at the moment, I'm going to change mine to primary text, which is basically black, and I'm going to stick with that. Now, the other thing that we can do here too is that we can change the heights. Well, actually, we'll come to that, but we'll do the colors first. Okay, so for the colors, we might decide that we are going to have, instead of blue, it's a bit in your face, I'm going to make it white. And I'm going to create a border. So the border I'm going to create is, I'm going to use the primary text thing, and what you'll see now is that we have a button which looks quite different to what we started with. Okay. Now, for these colors, once you've got your button set up, once you've got your button set up, you can actually save it as a template. Okay, so we come back to the templates. What we can actually do, and we'll still do this, is that we can save this widget as a template. So if we're formatting a button and we do it, and let's say we're building a bit of a project and we want buttons to have a common feel to it, we can click over here, up the top here, and we can save that as a widget. So let's call that new button style. Okay, so this is a sort of time-saving thing once you're really creating projects. Now, when I come along here and let's say I want to create a second button, what I can do is I can add a new widget, and I can go up here, and which is template widgets, and I can access this template and I can add it. So it now has the same, theoretically the same style. Okay. All right. So that's basically how you can create widgets. Templated widgets. Now the reason that one looks slightly different is actually because I tried to film this video initially and made an error and had to re-film the video, and that was actually, there's actually two templates there currently. That was the second one, so I come back to it now. There is my templates and there's a second one here, so that's the actual template we just saved. Okay, so you can save multiple templates. Now we don't need that, so we'll get rid of it, and we'll go back to the buttons. All right, so some other things that you can do on your buttons is you can, and this is default, if I can find it, is you have border radius. So what border radius means is that border radius is basically the rounded edges on the button. So you'll see there's little rounded edges there. It's not square, and that's a property called where is it here again? Sorry, border radius. So if I want to make it really round, so let's say I want to make it completely round, I think 50 does it, then I've got a perfectly rounded button, so I can get that rounded look. Okay, so that's what that does. Now I think 8 is the default. I quite like 8, so I'm going to stick with that. Okay, and 50, what 50 does is it's the maximum that gives you a fully rounded curve. But otherwise, you just 8 just gives you a nice little rounding line. Okay, so, and what else do we have in terms of properties here? They're the main ones. Okay. Okay, and what I'm going to do now too, and you'll just see me do it there, is instead of the button, the column being pushed over the side, I've now centered the button, and you'll see that these sort of, I'm jumping a little bit, but these sort of settings here allow you to change the alignment of the widgets within the column. Okay, so to center. Okay. Anywho, so that's basically the main things within a button, just for its appearance. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll create, and this will be the last thing we do for this lesson, is we will create some actions to be able to go from one page to the next. Now, in the meantime, while I'm here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a test mode. Now the reason I'm opening up now while I'm doing other things is test mode. When you first move to test mode, so what test mode does is it takes you into an area where you can test what you've just created. Now the problem with it, and which is for the purpose of the video, is that it takes 2 to 3 minutes for it to actually create it, and then you can refresh it. So I'm just going to create that now, just while it's waiting. Okay, and while that's doing its thing, we can come back and we'll come back to it a little bit later. Okay, so we have our second page. Now, if we want to create an action to make this button do something, what we can do is we can go to the action area. Now, to add the action, what we can do is we can add an action. The first thing we want to do is we want to decide what the action is. So you'll see it gives you default actions, and these actions change depending on the nature of the widget that you get options to. So in this case, you've got tap, double tap, long press, depending on that. So a tap, just a single tap for me is just fine. And I'm going to navigate, and you'll see that when I navigate, it immediately gives me the options for all the pages that exist. So often with the way that Flutterflow works is it gives you options to those things that are suitable, and this is a consistent theme throughout the package. So I want to go to the second page. So okay, so basically that's my first action. Okay, now if I want to do something similar, okay, and we'll set it up so that we can jump between the pages. So if we go back to our pages, I'm just going to pop in a button into the into this one as well, and we'll just stick in any old button and drag it in. Okay, and we'll create a navigation for this one as well. Okay, so we can go between them so you can see us flipping between. So I'm going to create an action, I'm going to navigate to, and this time I'm going to navigate back to the home page. Okay, so that action is set. We'll go back to our page and we'll do a second thing. Okay, and then the reason we're doing two actions on this is just so I can show you how you create action trees. Okay, so far we've got on our second page here, we've got one action, and it doesn't give you an option to add a second action. So that's kind of the default. But what we can do is we can again go into an action flow editor, and what that allows you to do is add multiple actions for the same thing, for the same pressing the button. So for example, you might have it navigating to a page, you might have it writing to the back end of a database, all in the one click. Okay, and the way that you do that is we've got one action here, is I can add a second action. So I'm going to add a second action here, and then we need to define that. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is we get a little bit of an error button here. So if I close it just for the moment, we'll come back to it in a second, you'll see that what we have now is we have errors. Okay, and those errors are happening. And so if we want to go into test mode, we've got to eliminate all those errors. It will not allow you to go in there unless. Now, if you click on it, you'll see that the reason there's an error is I've got an action that doesn't do anything. It's got no defining, so it says, well, you've got to fix that before we can go and test your thing, test your data. So once we fix that and define that second action, which we were doing, and we'll go back in there, then that error will go away. Now the second action I'm going to do, just for the purposes of demonstration, is I'm going to, and you'll see there's all these different actions that you could do. We're just going to go with an alert. So this is a notification or an alert to a user. Okay, and there's a few different ones that we can do. I'm just going to start with an informational dialogue, which basically means you're just sending a message to the user. So I'm going to put in app update. So this area here, and you can do it however you like, but basically this area is kind of the title of the message, and this is the message itself. So we are going to the second page. Okay, so that's the message that's going to be displayed. Now, if we want to have something instead of okay, you might, okay is all right. But if, for example, you want to change the text to cool or awesome or whatever, you can do that. Now that I've defined this, you'll see that this error we're talking about has disappeared. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move you can see the arrow here, I can move the order of the actions up and down. And the other thing I can do too is that if I've got an action that I want to reuse, and there are reasons why you would do that. You can just copy the action and paste it into a new spot. So if I copy the action here, when I click it to create a new one, I've got an option here to click to paste that action in. But we won't do that for the moment. Now I'm going to make the alert happen first and then the navigation happen second. Okay, so now we've got our actions set up and we can go to the test mode and test it, which I'm going to do now. So we have that open. Hopefully it's all sitting here. Okay, and you'll see that if we hit the instant reload button, it should just take a few seconds to come up. It says under 2 minutes, but usually it takes about 10 seconds. And it will take you into your app any second now. Come on. There we go. Okay, so we're on the title page. Okay, if we want to test that our app's working, and what you'll notice too is, and these are all really good things that make Flutterflow work well and make it easier, is they've already got preset animation. So you'll see that, for example, the cursor is changing to show that it's a clickable button. That's all default stuff that's set up by Flutterflow, and that's one of the reasons why it makes it really quick to actually do that. Now, okay, and there's our app update. So that happens first. So you remember that we had a title, then we had a message, and then an OK. So I could click OK, and then it transfers to the second page, and we'd set this button to go back, to navigate back to our title page. So that's pretty much our first little projects. All right, so we're going to leave it there, and we'll move on to playing around with variables next lesson. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.